Give us some background on how you got into this.
Yeah, I'm 56 years old, born and raised in Chicago, still live in the Chicago North Shore area. Was always interested in anything with conspiracies and ufology. I was a child from the 60s and 70s, so that's when documentaries started to appear a little bit more on TV. A lot of them were about Bigfoot and about UFOs, and I obviously got hooked because I was a child of the TV generation when TV was only 5 channels, but that's what everyone did. We watched a lot of TV. And it was in 1997 when I was campaigning to run for state rep and living downtown. And I saw this bizarre documentary about an alien that was being interviewed. I'm thinking it's going to be a weird looking person at the Pentagon with a clipboard for a job interview. And I'm laughing at myself because that's really what I thought the documentary was about. And I see this, tan gray being that's not gray, and he doesn't have the almond eyes. And then I hear Victor talking. And at the time, I was on the periphery of Troy Duffy's Brood. Troy Duffy was the documentary that was made about him. He is the director and writer of the Boondock Saints, and he had a rock band, and he had this group of people. It was like a cult. I was on the periphery of that. So and I'm not getting off on track, but so I knew a lot about Hollywood and production and writing. And I said to myself, this Victor character, this is not some screenwriting kid in Southern California belting this out on a piece of paper. Something's not right.
What is the Victor interview, and why is that important?
In 1996, a man claiming to be a former government employee walked into Fox Network TV studios, offices, and claimed he had a 3-minute interview of an extraterrestrial at an underground facility shot back in 1999, filmed back in 1991. They couldn't guarantee his safety. He went across to a newsstand. He found a second-tier video production company called Rocket Pictures. He called them up. They invited him in. He came in on a taxi cab, very important. And I'm a government employee. Here is this 3-minute interview of an alien. They watched it for 2 weeks. They vetted who Victor was. Very important to this investigation, because if Victor was an actor, why are you researching and trying to find out about if he was a government employee? And about 3 weeks later, they signed him to a confidentiality agreement, and they came to terms on money. And in 1997, we see a version of what Victor produced on a 3-minute VHS tape. Tan, type 3 gray being interviewed in an underground facility. And about 2 minutes into the thought projection interview, he starts to have a medically flag and become distressed and coughing. 2 doctors, people call them medics, whatever you want, come in and mask and medical headdress and tend to the being, and the video ends.
All right, we're looking at the interview suite at S4. It's kept dark for the comfort of the aliens. The figure who is just barely visible in the left foreground is the telepath, and behind the camera is a raked seating area for observers. Although in this case, I believe the only other person present was a military aide. The alien is seated behind a glass partition in a biocontainment area, which is maintained at biosafety level 2, the lowest designation. That's primarily for the protection of the aliens, not us. The theory is that if they were going to infect us with an alien bug, it would have happened 50 years ago. In fact, all the indications are the aliens eliminated microbial and viral life from their own ecosystem long ago. They aren't susceptible to our diseases directly, but it has been shown that microbes can reproduce and form colonies within their respiratory systems, which tends to exacerbate the debilities they seem to suffer anyway in our environment. In fact, you can see here the alien is beginning to flag. The interview was not going well. The telepath was trying to clarify some points from a previous interview, but he wasn't receiving coherent responses. As you can see, the being is in real distress. At this point, the telepath is sending out a message to the medical staff. He's trying to communicate with the alien, but he's getting no response. There's very little he can do. There's no direct connection between his space and the biocontainment area. That's the aide stepping in on the right. The medical staff should be there by now. They're slow in responding. There they are. I have to say the medical personnel at S4 are less than first rate. They tend to be selected for their willingness to keep secrets rather than their medical competence. By the way, he's not shining that light into the eyes. It looks that way, but in fact he's checking for hemorrhaging around the eye sockets and in the nasal cavity. I'm sorry. It's very hard for me to watch this.
And Victor claims that this is a part of a program for the United States government to reverse engineer biological and metal from off-planet and interdimensional beings. Victor doesn't use interdimensional in the context that I am. And it comes out after the alien autopsy, so it falls flat. It comes out on the UPN network, which I got wrong. Again, I want to pat myself on the back one time. I'm the only UFO investigator out there, I think, that will look in the camera, tell you when he's wrong, tell you when he screwed up, tell you when he made a mistake, because I'm fumbling in the dark like a regular person. So I got that wrong. I always thought it was on Fox. It was on the UPN network on a show called Strange Universe, and they blocked out, I think, 2 hours for this shockumentary. And that's what it is.
To be fair, I think Fox owns UPN, or did at the time. So I think you're in the clear on that.
Okay.
I remember I used to watch UPN. You said type 3. What's a type 3 when you described a being?
This is really important here, the way I say this. From what my investigation has shown me, from what I have been told, there's 3 types of grays. And does it really matter what the 1, 2, and 3 are? If you want to enter, let's not be bogged down. There's 3 types of grays. There's the one that's the short, atypical gray being that's gray skin, bluish gray skin with the very pointy almond eyes that wrap around the side of the head, about 3 feet tall. There is another type of gray, which I believe is the Roswell gray, which looks a little bit more humanoid. The eyes start to become a little less almond shaped. They have more of a whiter skin than it does gray and blue. And then there is our type, which the DIA report referred to it as the other gray. So a not so popular gray, the other gray. That's exactly what was in the DIA report. And that is one that has round eyes and a terracotta peanut butter tan skin. And they are a little bit taller. The beings don't use telepathy. It's thought projection. And from what people who have encountered these beings have said, all conjecture, second tier stories, is that when you walk into the room, in your head, the being is saying to you, it's like a thought being placed in your head. Oh, I know what you're going to ask me. You want to know what's in the Indian Ocean. And it's like almost like an effortless communication with the being. They know the questions that you want to ask, and they give them back to you, and they often give them back to you in pictures. If you are visiting another solar system, another planet, and encountering beings that you don't know their language, what is the most effective way to, if you're the 1850s and you're in the Amazon, what's the most effective way to communicate with a tribe? If you could, you would like to put thoughts in their brain of who you are, where you're from, your family, what you do for a profession. You would put pictures in their head. Anybody can understand a picture. So I find that funny that that's the mode of communication with these grays, is thought projection, which would be very, very crucial coming to any planet where you cannot communicate with the life form on that planet. So that is what people have described thought projection. It just comes, it's in your brain already. You don't even need to think about the questions you want to ask.
Were you ever able to get an accurate, or at least hone in on a date when this thing was actually made? Because I remember hearing about the alien interview all the way back to, I heard about it from John Leer first on George Knapp's show.
Now there's still one EBE still living, EBE3, and there is a videotape that eventually is going to be released to the public, and it's an interview with him. As hard as that may sound, as hard as that may be to believe, there is a videotape of an interview with EBE3.
And what is this language that the interviewers are?
I haven't seen the tape, so I don't know.
So what was the reaction when you started to put this information out there, and as you started to proceed with this project from the community?
The first podcast I ever went on was the Jeff Rense podcast. Jeff owns a website called Rense.com. It's a conglomerate and aggregate of all things conspiracy. Really, and it's been out there for 30 years. And as I was talking with the producer, remember folks, the first time I was going live with the alien interview, and what I had found, especially about the monitor, 2 days before Memorial Day, 2022, all of my read but not deleted emails were wiped off my phone. And the Jeff Rense producer's like, oh, don't even worry about it. This happens a lot to our guests. I'm like, well, it's never happened to me. And so, I'm like, I'm talking about business emails about my godfather that died in Vietnam, just gone. Just wiped. Then the second time I had this bizarre screen swirling around. It was not we can't find an internet signal. The third time was after the Lockheed story, which made me come forward to one podcast, Redacted, to simply call off the hounds. Not that I felt that my life was in danger, like an assassination, but like the harassment level was going to pick up. I want to get that across. And that time, my emails were swiped once again, not the sent emails, but the read but not deleted. I went to my police department, and the police officer looked at me, and I told him the whole 5-minute story. He said, I don't think you're crazy at all. I would come here do the same thing. He had me go to the FBI with the police report incident number. I went to Congressman Brad Schneider, which we're still setting up a meeting in the future. Congressman Tim Burchett, his man Noah Houghton, sent me to my senator, Dick Durbin. That meeting is still being trying to be set up to figure out, what are you doing to this guy? Why are you doing this? And it needs to stop.
When you went on Rense's podcast, when was that?
That was 2 or 3 days before Memorial Day, 2022.
So in 2022,
I turned off of 139 right by the Whitetail Inn in outside of Tipler, Wisconsin. And my wife goes, "Did you just see your phone?" I'm like, "No," because it was in the cup holder. She's like, "It went blue, white, blue." So we picked it up. I'm like, and I'm looking, and I'm checking around, and I go to my emails. I'm like, where the F are my emails? Blah, 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 blah. So I'm just casually telling this to Jeff Rense's producer. Oh, that happens all the time. Our guests totally get harassed. I'm just telling you what was told to me.
So you went on Rense's podcast. You are talking about the Victor interview and
Correct.
what you've learned about it in your investigation. And you're saying on your way to the interview, this is before you even go on air.
The interview was by
hacked?
phone.
It's by phone.
The interview was by phone. Yeah. The interview was by phone. Yeah. So we were up.
So was the hack before the interview, or did it happen after the?
Before the interview. Now, before the interview, the producer and I, and Jeff Rense a couple of times, are sending emails back, and here's the photograph of the monitor, and here's what I learned here. And I did not get the DI report at that time. This was just really about the monitor and whatnot. So we were sending a plethora of emails back and forth. Is Jeff Rense's program, according to his producer, is monitored to some degree because, again, what was told to me was, oh, this happens all the time. Don't even worry about it. So I didn't.
So after the interview, you go on the interview, you do the show, you are talking about Victor. Does that activity increase? Does it disappear for a while? What happens next?
So we come home, we tell our kids what happened, and they're like, well, Daddy, what alien interview? So I bring my two, they were high school age at the time, daughters into our room where our computer is. And as my daughter is going into the computer room, she gets a Snapchat from a person that is not on her friend list, that she's never communicated with. And as she is walking down the stairs to see Daddy's crazy alien interview, the Snapchat person says, "Do you believe in aliens?" I'm like, oh, okay. My daughters were pretty freaked out. And she will go on, we will all go on record that happened just as she was about to see the film. Then my phone would go off, an alarm. Now, Chad Kalick of Mr. No Face, a great guy in the UFO community. He was the director, producer, writer of Mr. No Face, where he started investigating that he thinks he saw a gray alien at an abandoned facility. He said, John, I was in the paranormal community for 20 years. Nothing ever happened weird in my life. He said, John, the first week I investigated aliens and gray aliens, my life electronically went haywire. Now, am I telling people a yarn, or am I reiterating, is my mutual history kind of symbolizing what happened to Chad Kalick? So my alarm went off twice at midnight. Do you know what it's like to set your alarm on iPhone? You have to get into the app. Well, you have to go into the homepage, get into the app, set the time, set the music, or set the alarm ringtone, press, activate or whatever I'm using. I'm an old guy. And so that was weird too. And then it did dissipate until about, maybe about a year ago when I started doing all the FOIAs, when I talked to the person from the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, that to me, Clint, and that was right before Thanksgiving of 2022, that I think set the alarm bells off left and right, because I gave the commanding officer at the National Air and Space Intelligence Center a list of 16 questions of trying to put this guy on camera in silhouette and voice altered. And those questions, they were bombshells. It was like getting right to the nitty gritty. And I put down the fact that he told me the new designation of aliens, which here is another thing, which I wonder about the UFO community. A agent from the National Air and Space Intelligence Center at Wright Pat has told one person the new designation of extraterrestrials inside these special access programs. And he told me, I'm not saying I'm special, I'm just making a point. And I tell the world, which is SABRE, synthetic astrobiological extraterrestrial races. Was he cleared to tell me that? I don't know, but I put that on the questions. And again, he disappeared for 3 months until I demanded. I said, I'm going to call your commanding officer and find out if you're alive, if you're dead. We have to respond. And he responded with this real terse, mean message, which he was such a nice guy. Do not call me anymore. I have been told to cease and desist contact. You are on a special watch list because of your FOIA request, your overseas emails, and the nature of your investigation. You are to destroy all communication between us, written and electronic, and all this Department of Defense coding at the bottom, like when you get a corporate communique from somebody. Really bizarre. Really, really bizarre.
So this is all coming from the Victor investigation that is ongoing, and as the years go on, you're continuing to send out FOIA requests. You're contacting people directly, and you're just straight out asking, like, what's the deal here? And this is the reaction you're getting.
Yeah, to answer that honestly, I really don't know again, that's why I said like 4 minutes ago, and I'm not being combative. I really don't know what is the nugget that has triggered them. Was it overseas emails? Was it my FOIA request? Was it talking to this agent from the National Air and Space Intelligence Center at Wright Pat? I don't know what is tripping off the defense industry or the intelligence community. I honestly have to look in the camera and say I would be just pulling at straws to what it was. I do know that there was a document which an intelligence person said was coded correctly from the 90s, and that's what my first FOIA was to the DIA, and that's the one that at the DIA sent off alarm bells. I called the FOIA department. They're like, your name's here, your file is missing. I'm like, what's the big deal? He's like, you can't be on here without a file. This was told to me by Andrew of the DIA FOIA department. Somebody had to have come on this computer and removed your file. You can't take that away. That was said to me. And so is it that document? Is it Project Aquarius, which I've been told is the umbrella project for, all things relating for extraterrestrials with human Homo sapien contact? I don't know. And I'm being honest with your viewers. I don't know. All I know is that it happened and it ramped up again right after the Lockheed email fiasco. Well, not fiasco. I mean, after the Lockheed email story.
Did you watch any of the Soul Foundation videos? Have you seen any of those?
I've seen a couple
presented
of them,
during that symposium.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting, but I just, I kind of glanced at things. I really want to dig into it when I have some free time. Did you want to ask me something about that, or something that they
watch the one? There's an admiral named Timothy Gallaudet, a Navy admiral who ran NOAA, and he talks about, he gives maybe a 15-20 minute presentation. And he said that during some military training exercises that he was overseeing, he was in charge of the weather observation for that entire exercise. So his team and his people were administering that for the Navy. And they kept seeing this object show up on their screens. They couldn't figure out what it was. And they were asking him, do you know? And he had an email chain going back and forth with about 4 or 5 other admirals. These are all admirals. And asking each other, do you know what this is? Can you identify this? Did any of your satellites see anything? What can you tell us? And he said that he had this chain going back and forth, and he went into the office one day, and all his emails, and not only his emails, but everyone else on that chain, their emails had been wiped from their machines. And they couldn't find him on the server. They couldn't find him anywhere. This is 5 or 6 admirals talking back and forth to each other. And somebody's like reached in and deleted them. And it's just interesting because, we're hearing this a lot from people that this is, my sense is, and I wonder what you think, that as the attention of the wider public turns to this, I think it's safe to say that this has gone mainstream now, right? Yeah. And more people are starting to look at this. The pushback is getting a lot more intense, and it seems like weirdness starts to follow people who dig into this too much. Does that sound fair?
It's very fair. And I went on the Cosmic Road to show them. I tried to, and I will. I could put this on Reddit. God forbid I ever go on Reddit again. but
we'll come to Reddit next.
After the Lockheed story, one of the things that scared me that was so bizarre was a text from my wife 2 Fridays ago where the entire text screen was milky white, like a cloud. Only you could see the current text. So I went to Apple, folks, for the second time, and they did a deep electronic incursion. And just like in 2022, they told me, because in 2022, after the Jeff Rents, I did go to Apple, where they went into my phone. I was sitting there while they were doing a deep forensic audit. And I have her name, Marsha. I have the Apple case ID. She said, my director is standing above me. There's no way this could happen. The only cloudiness we have ever seen, the Apple Corporation, has been with pictures. And my director is telling me, we have never seen a text screen go cloudy, milky like that has happened that you are showing us. We don't know what to do. I will end this segment with this. It sounds like a bar joke, but 2 former CIA field officers, one that was very high up in the CIA, own a microbrewery. I'm not lying to you, because it sounds like a joke is starting. I go deer hunting. The guy, I get the guy, he's at the bar, he's looking down. I said, can I ask you a quick question? Because I just met him. My cousins introduced us. Said, is the Department of Naval Intelligence real? And I said, I want to be clear here, not the office, the Department of Naval Intelligence. And he had his hands like a preacher, like a chapel. And he looked and he said, yeah, it's real. And he gets up and he goes in his office for like 15 minutes. Like, what did he bang his head on the wall? What did I do? Anyways, his wife, who is the most ardent, almost ignorant skeptic with aliens and UFOs. Can you imagine a CIA person telling you that life elsewhere doesn't exist and they're not coming to Earth? So I tell her about my emails. We walk outside. She runs to the door. I'll never forget this. She grabs my elbow, like, I'm staring at, like we're promenading together. And she said, look, I believe you about your emails. It's not the Pentagon. You need to check NSA. It's a former CIA field agent telling me off camera and off the record, it's not the Pentagon. Check the NSA. So do that with what you will do with Wheel. Now I've been told what the program is. Stingray Centipede is the program. I remember clicking on a set of numbers like a freaking idiot, me, clicking on a set of numbers in my text message. And after that, the craziness started again. The program is called Stingray Centipede from the NSA. It's not mostly used for illegal, like trafficking drugs. It's used for counterintelligence. They just want to know what you know. And they want to see what's on your computer and on your emails. Counterintelligence. So that made me feel a little bit better, but still very disconcerting that in a constitutional republic that this is happening. Because, Clint, you can tell by the interactions you and I have had for 3 weeks, emailing each other. I'm an easygoing person. You don't want me to talk about something. I'm a patriot. Knock on my door. Show me your credentials. Tell me what you don't want me to talk about, and I'll stop. If it's under deep national security, if I'm causing a problem, don't be a weasel and steal my emails. And I'll end at that. So
in your FOIA request, did you learn anything? What did you learn from all of the pushing that you did? And what information were you able to gather?
Nothing. And intelligence people laugh at me. FOIA requests. What do you think they're going to get for? They're going to string you along. They won't answer you. They'll wait till you follow it up. And if you this is a quote, if you back them into the corner enough, they are just going to tell you this is a part of national security. We can't release it. So I stopped my FOIA request after the last DIA one. I FOIA'd the FBI regarding Bob Dean. There's a story that I would learn where Bob Dean hid this one of the alien interviews in a bank vault in Paradise Valley, Arizona. The FBI comes back. This will be in the documentary with, they didn't say it didn't happen. They just said, we can't tell you about it, because the FBI raided the bank in Paradise Valley, Arizona, to find Bob Dean's safety deposit box. Nothing was in it. We can't tell you about it because you are not Bob Dean or any of his heirs. So the FOIA requests are a dead end. I would really encourage anyone to not go down that road unless, you want to get with the Black Vault, John Greenwald, who's an expert at that, who's had a lot more success with FOIA. I have absolutely, completely hit a dead wall. And one last thing, Clint, here's an interesting thing. A lot of times when you do a FOIA request, they have you do it on their website. I don't know if you can guess where I'm going with this. So yes, sometimes you get a, hello, Mr. Stewart, here is your file number. We know that, this is your proof that you have entered and sometimes you don't get that, the response. So when you go to try and look back for a FOIA request, you're not looking your sent emails. It's not there because you've done it on their website. I don't know if that's done on purpose, but that's very smart and very frustrating. So I'd love to tell you I had got this great information, and I didn't.
Even people who are really good at it will sometimes, a lot of times they just send back a piece of paper that's got black lines all over it, and there's it's all redacted. You can't read anything anyway. Yeah, it's like, here you go. Here's a black sheet of paper. It's in there.
Yeah, this is going to help me. This is going to progress the investigation.
When I was doing my research before our call, I saw that there was a documentary project called Finding Victor. Is that still in the works? Or
yeah, there are two documentaries, Clint. Hunting Victor, which is not going to be the name of it, I don't think, is sitting right now on the desk of unscripted television of a network right now, trying to figure out if they're going to completely green light it, how they're going to put it into their schedule. So finally, after 4 years, this thing is finally sitting on a desk because it's the only way. I've run out of money. So anybody that this is a grifter or a con man, I have $20,000 plus into this investigation. Jon Stewart's wife ain't happy. So I'm not selling a book to anybody, even though I wrote one. I'm not directing you to a website. I don't want you to click or like or subscribe. I don't want your credit card number. I'm into this for 20 grand. The only way I can finish this documentary, two big things, the voice analysis and recreating the alien. I want to see if special effects people in 2024 can recreate the alien and do the seamless mouth opening and closing, just like the alien puppet in 1996. That's going to take a lot of money that I do not have allocated for this project, even though I had a really good day with my praying and manifesting some stocks that help me are going to get some more money, but it's not going to be anywhere near the level of what Hollywood could help me do. So I don't want anyone in the UFO community to spend any money other than watching it on their streaming service for this documentary. And I'm proud of that. I've kept the grift and the con away from this. And then the second documentary is called The Bird Dog, or also a working title is Real Aliens, REEL, Real Aliens, selling a real close encounter, selling aliens to America. That is the documentary. It's very cheap. It's talking heads sitting at a table, like, just sitting here, almost like a glorified podcast, where I talk about all of the background of the investigation, dealing with the media and Congress and Hollywood. Look, folks, I'm not telling you this video is 100% authentic. I will never be able to do that because we don't have the puppet or the body. I just want people to treat my documentary and my investigation as you would when you watch 911 Loose Change, a good 9/11 documentary. Does it prove the government was complicit? Probably not. It doesn't. Nobody can ever probably totally prove it. But does it make you raise your eyebrow? And that's all I've ever wanted out of people. I don't want you. You don't have to tell me your opinion. I just want you to think about it. And again, like a good conspiracy documentary that's well thought out and well put together, where it makes you question things and raises your eyebrows, folks. That's all I want out of this entire alien investigation.
I think the Victor interview is really a fascinating one to watch because there are moments where you look at it and you go, this has got to be real. And then there's other moments where it looks totally fake and you can't tell. It's like you're in this uncanny valley with this thing. And I thought it was the way it moved. The first time I watched it, I looked at its eyes and I was like, the eyes, there's something about the eyes that just doesn't look fake. They don't look like dead eyes. I don't know how to explain that, but I just looked. And then when it kind of struggles a little bit, I'm like, why would you fake that? Like, there's a weird thing to fake.
It wasn't dark, what Victor brought to the studios in '96. It had a bluish hue. That's on the internet. The original version was a bluish hue. It was the production company that darkened it. It makes it look like a puppet. I agree with people. When you just see the head and it's all black, it could be construed as a puppet. But it's also the worst, if it's a hoax, the worst hoax ever. The medics are not in pressurized suits. There's a stool with a red top that they bought. The Department of Defense or the DIA or the Air Force bought it like a Kmart in Las Vegas, and that's left in the production. The bean isn't gray, it's tan. Why would you put in and then a DNI on the bottom, which you can't find back in '97? Why would you put in all of these obvious aspects that could lead somebody to say this is a hoax? The bean is tan. The medics aren't in pressurized suits. The DNI doesn't exist. There's a chair from Kmart. And this is ridiculous. So, it's either the worst hoax ever perpetrated on man, worst meaning unprofessional, or it's a very casual, run-of-the-mill interview of an alien. And to lead the next part very quickly, another person, his name is Nico. He's a tech guru from France, living in Senegal, said in 15 years ago, Israeli scientist showed him this video, and it was our being from a different angle with more people in the room. So,
it's a weird, this one's a weird one.
It is.
It's a weird one. If my own understanding of it is going back to the John Leer, George Knapp interview, which was, I think, 1988. Okay. So like back in 1988, 87, yep. 87 on the record, George Knapp,
yep.
John Leer, who is associated with the CIA, flew for the CIA, pilot, son of the founder of the Lear jet company. That's who John Leer is. This is not a nobody. No. Goes on George Knapp's program and says, there's going to be, in this voice he has, there's going to be an interview. It's going to be released. It's an interview with an alien. And he tells the story.
Now, there's still one EBE still living, EBE3, and there is a videotape that eventually is going to be released to the public, and it's an interview with him. As hard as that may sound, as hard as That may be to believe there is a videotape of an interview with EBE3.
And what is this language that the interviewers are?
I haven't seen the tape, so I don't know.
The second time I heard about it was on Coast to Coast, and it was talked about there.
Right.
And then it surfaces, and people can't tell if it's real or fake. And I think what the bigger takeaway from this is, we know that the intelligence community will occasionally put out things that are made to be debunked, specifically so that when people see that it's debunked later, they go, oh, well, it's all fake. This was the alien autopsy thing. The whole thing with Jonathan Frakes, he came out and he was like, is it?
If what you are about to see is real, it's the most startling film footage in history. Although we remain skeptical, some experts believe this is authentic footage of an alien life form. Real or not, we must warn you. This appears to be an actual autopsy.
And sometimes they'll fake stuff and then they'll release it as if it were real. They'll let people believe it's real for a year or two, and then they'll have the guy come out and say, oh, I made it all up.
Straw man. And I want to say something with the John Leer interview, because you had Danny Sheehan, who I've talked to at great length at one time, and compared notes. It is my opinion, after speaking with Danny Sheehan, that John Leer was speaking about the Danny Sheehan alien interview that Danny Sheehan talked about, which was an Air Force led interview of an extraterrestrial. And you had Danny on your program talking about it, and I credit you. So what does that tell us? That tells us there's two alien interviews. I mean, two separate beings, or two different Navy and the Air Force, two interviews from two different, different military. It's unbelievable.
There's probably hundreds. If you had an alien, you'd turn the camera on every time you talk to that alien, wouldn't you? Like I would. I'd record it on 10 cameras. I'd have, like, look at in Close Encounters where the ship comes in. They've got. It's the scene in Close Encounters where the ship comes in and they've got all the scientists lined up, and then they've got movie camera guys. There's photographers around. I mean, you would document everything about this. So there's probably hundreds of interviews out there, and it's hard. How would you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And the guy from Right Pat, one of the things he said, other than telling me Saber, which I cannot believe did not catch wildfire in the internet, whatever. But because people,
cool
I want information. I want information. Okay, I gave you information. Don't worry about it. One of the things he said is don't, and that's why I say I think this is 87% accurate from my investigation, and I think there is a 7% chance to 10% chance that this was manufactured by the government in their magic program department and put out because an agent from Wright Pat's National Air and Space Intelligence Center said, quote, a lot of times when an event happens that we put out the identical event, but it's staged, but so we can later tell you when we get, called to the carpet. Well, we did try and notify you of it. We just couldn't show you the actual landing of the craft. So we staged the landing, but it shows the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And that was said.
And they can always deny it later and say, oh, it was fake.
They can deny it. And then when they're called to the carpet, well, we tried to show you that. So is it possible that the 1997 alien interview was a staged event? Possible. 7%? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell us about the Lockheed Firefight. What is this story, and how did you get involved in it?
Sure. And again, I don't know if I correctly talked about this even on Redacted and another podcast that I went on. After every one of my podcasts that I've done, probably like 30 right now, I'm not on social media to any extent. So I tell people, if you have anything that is pertinent to this investigation, not me wrestling Sergeant Slaughter on ESPN, if you have anything pertinent to this investigation, or anything about this film, or anything pertinent that you might feel would be relevant to me, here is my email. Now, I've given that out about 30 times, and I have gotten probably 7 people to email me that I feel are part of the intelligence community or worked in these special access programs. So this is how I was contacted. I give my email after every podcast and ask people to contact me. And when I got the email, I'm like, well, this is an interesting story. I know Lockheed is, arm in arm with the government. I also, and I got made fun of for this, that it looked like somebody from the corporate world or government. And how could Jon Stewart know that? Because I know when a pro wrestler.
Well, back up.
Go ahead, sure.
Back up for the people who have no idea what we're talking about here. I'm familiar with it because I've watched the other interview you did, and I looked into this myself. But set it up for someone who's completely fresh. What is this story? Okay. The Locky Firefight, because it's a crazy story.
Crazy.
It's crazy.
Shit crazy, and might rock the foundations of our Constitution. Might. I didn't say will. If it's true. I get an email from a person that said he was a Marine, a former Lockheed employee working for a company, Bechtel, which I never heard of. So I never heard of that company. And he said, look, there's a story that has been was circulating around Lockheed from, and I'm just paraphrasing, that Lockheed eventually found out how to break through an alien craft that they had in possession from the government, and they used telepathy to break through how to make a alien reproduction vehicle that mimicked the technology of an actual extraterrestrial vehicle. They hid this development from the government, and in northern Nevada, this craft was set down, crashed. I don't remember what the vernacular was. Lockheed was tracking it with their own internal recovery team. Now, folks, this makes sense. If you're a aviation company, you're going to have teams to recover if anything goes down. That's just that part of the story I didn't question. And when the Lockheed crash retrieval team went upon this craft, another special operation group was also descending on this craft. He says that this group was JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. People have said they didn't operate in America. We have Michael Herrera coming forward with a lengthy story that JSOC did operate in America for crash retrievals. I don't know this. I don't even know what JSOC was at that point back in December. And he just tells me that because one group did not know what the other group was, because the government thought this was an alien vehicle. That's the crux of the story, because they weren't informed by Lockheed. A firefight ensued, according to this person, according to the talk at Lockheed. A firefight ensued where two JSOC soldiers were killed. And both of those soldiers, he specifically mentioned, was of Asian descent. This was sent to me by a Michael L. I found him on LinkedIn, folks. He answered my questions. He also emailed Ross Coulthard, and Ross emailed him back with, I've heard of this story, and my sources tell me that it is verifiable. And when he found out where the telepaths and the Victor investigation were from, he ghosted me. That's the story. And please let us talk about the stages of a whistleblower, because it's very important to this investigation. But that is the story. A firefight, Lockheed lying to the government that they made this advancement, and both the JSOC and Lockheed advancing on this craft. Crazy, crazy story.
And so this person reaches out to you directly in an email.
Yeah. Right.
And tells you this over, is this in one conversation, or is this over a number of different conversations? Are you going back and forth asking questions?
Yeah. So when people say I made up the email address, it was emailing myself back and asking myself questions about a company that he works for I've never even heard of. I fell off the chair when somebody told me what Bechtel, I can't even pronounce it. Bechtel, B-A-C-T-E-L-L-E. It's a Seattle-based high-tech company that does black projects with the government. This is what I was told. I still have no idea who they are. But I found him on LinkedIn. And yes, I would ask him questions. He would answer them to the best of his ability. And then once I gave him, which it seems like it was like a pinpointed program to find out about my telepaths, what I have been told about the telepaths at S4. And once that email went to him, he ghosted me. There are stages with a whistleblower. I did not invent these. This is from former FBI profilers. This is from people who specialize in whistleblowing. There is the trigger event where they are pissed off at their employer and they want some sort of retribution, but retribution that does not affect their employment, right? If you're a pro wrestler in the 70s, and I bring this up because I think it is a very valid analogy. If you're a pro wrestler in the 70s and you're pissed at your promoter because he's screwing you on money and you want to expose that wrestling is fake, but you know you're going to get fired, you might even get the crap beat out of you by other wrestlers, or even an attempted, being killed by a promoter for ruining their business. You tell a low-level reporter. So there's the trigger event. And then then it's the purge event, that where you reveal the information, not to your boss to affect your income, your career, but to a low-level person, a reporter, or voila, Jon Stewart, a guy that's investigating this phenomenon and going on podcasts. And then there is the caveat stage, which is, well, this could all be fake. Where they wonder, well, if this gets out, this might track back to me. I've got to now put distance between me and the person that I am purging to. And then there is the regret stage. And that is when many whistleblowers will ghost you. Ghosting is not an indication of deceptiveness or lying or a fake story. This is a common last stage of a whistleblower where they ghost you. They've done the purge. It's almost like I was with a psychiatrist in Kansas City at a wedding, and we were talking about this, and she said, yes, it's almost like a serial killer. You've got the trigger, they murder, then it's causing distance. They move away from the neighborhood, or they move out of the country, and then you never hear from them again until they have to do something again. Very, very common stages. So this is why I feel that he ghosted me, but I also feel that this was a part and parcel of some type of a project to get more information from me. So the useful idiot, I will raise my hand and say I was stupid enough to tell him about the telepaths from my investigation. And so I don't know the truth. All I know, he is on LinkedIn, and I'm yet to call him at his office in Seattle. And he told me specific things, which, liars don't do. I work in Seattle, but at the satellite office, like giving me, he agreed that we could talk by phone. He agreed that if I went to Seattle, he would meet with me. So he wasn't shying away from this story, which was a second-hand story, and which I thought was a little crazy too. And when a week later, my emails go missing for the second time, and I look up Lockheed on YouTube, and I hear they have a hacking program. I talked to Stephen Greer, who has a Wikipedia about Lockheed. He's like, be very careful. I'm like, doctor, careful about what? He goes, I'd be more worried about a corporation than I would the government. And that, I'm sorry, sent me off. Maybe I was paranoid. I didn't think I was a deadly threat, but the threat of more incursion, more privacy invasion that was going to happen. I simply went forward to one of my friends, Clayton Morris, on a huge podcast called Redacted, said, I think the story is crazy, but coming forward to tell the community, whoever may be listening, that I'm not on the story, please call the dogs off. And that although I think this is a crazy story, I am paranoid because it coincided with my emails going missing from my phone once again. So forgive me for being paranoid. Forgive me for coming forward with the story. I thought the UFO community, would want people to come forward, especially when I have shown all the emails to people on Reddit. I've shown his LinkedIn account. I've shown the email to Ross Coulthard. This was a story that was emailed to me. I didn't manufacture it for attention. It's crazy. And do I think it's true? I don't know. It's a crazy freaking story, but I got paranoid. Sorry, folks.
It's a crazy story. And if it's true, if any part of it's true, that's what I tell people about this whole subject, right? They're like, what, do you believe in all this? And I'm like, look, 10%, pick any 10%. Of this story, if 10% of it's true, if 1% of it's true, it'll change your whole world, right? Like what 10% would you want to be true? Anti-gravity, aliens, time travel, telepathy, take your pick. It doesn't matter. It's all, there's some kind of a there. I'm talking about the whole concept of UFOs and alien life and non-human intelligence being here. As for the Lockheed story, it is interesting because if you could find this guy on LinkedIn, clearly his employer would know, like someone's going to find him. Do you think that this could be deliberate misinformation just put out there to see where it goes?
Yes. Shocking? Yeah, of course. I've said it a million times. In the 5 years of the Victor investigation, have I been duped? Of course I have. Have I been used? Of course I have. That's my 56 years of experience to weed through that. You know, if I'm a reporter from 2020, I'm going to investigate a mafia assassin who's now willing to talk. Yeah, I'm going to feel that this guy's probably going to tell some tall tales and whatnot, but let me weed through and find out what the root of his story is. The mob assassinated people, if I can use that analogy. So yes, I think that this was, you know, and I've yet to call him at his office, and I'm going to. I've had people say, reporters in the UFO field, I want to be specific, telling me, don't contact him. You'll blow his cover. You'll explode it. Don't do it. Don't, hey, if you want to,
if you could find him on LinkedIn, they already know.
Yeah. If you want to ghost me and not, finish the story and put something to me, and then I put it out and you tell me I could put it out, and then you don't want to follow up with me and hold my hand. Well, I got a problem with that. And I'll find you and I'll confront you. I told this to Jack from Cosmic Road. I sent an email to the CEO of Lockheed. His first name is Jim, last Wednesday. They haven't responded. Just to tell them this is what's going on. This is what the whole story is. If you YouTube Lockheed, I'm the third story about the third thing that comes up is this story, this crazy story. Do you want to talk about it? Is there something, I don't want the stock price to go down. I don't want to ruin any kind of national security implications. And I apologize for people that were offended that I came forward. My family's more important than your family. Sorry. And I'm sure people feel the same way. And, but the story's not over. I want to go to I know it's 20 miles southeast of Luning, Nevada. And,
what year was this supposedly this event took place?
2004 specifically. So I tell people, if you think the story is half truth, can't we, and again, Jon Stewart, eliciting the YouTube UFO community, can't we find out who died, who were in special forces in 2004, like the, Clint, very brief, the Dulce Firefight story. You mean to tell me we can't find out if 25 CIA agents died in whenever that Dulce Firefight happened? I think that would be an easy thing to research. Instead of yelling at each other and calling each other names, why don't we research who died? So can we research who, if any, special forces? And he told me that they were both of Asian descent. Very interesting. And this person was of Asian descent. So was this the trigger event? Somebody that shared his ancestry that died, and maybe their family was being lied to. And people are like, well, you came forward and you don't know the truth. But what if me coming forward starts an investigation where the families do find the truth? I think then that me coming forward is revelatory and is an important spark that might bring truth to what happened. And most importantly, being a guy that ran for Congress, that a corporation is subverting the Constitution and lying to government. That bothers me.
I think that's what you're really seeing right now. When you look at all of these members of Congress running around to these briefings and they come out and they look like just glass-eyed and shell-shocked, like somebody just hit them with a taser. It's because what they're learning in there, they're learning aliens are real and they're learning that UFOs are real, and they're learning that. But that's not the thing that's really freaking them out. What's freaking them out is that they are not actually in charge the way they think they're in charge. And that's what they're learning. that this government is a wholly owned subsidiary of the military-industrial complex. Prior to World War II, we didn't even have an armaments industry in this country, and now it's the industry. It's right. How many trillions of dollars?
Clint,
if you had unlimited money and a UFO,
16th aircraft carrier group. We need another aircraft carrier group. We only have 15.
Our military budget is larger than the next 10 largest militaries in the world combined. You could cut our budget in half and it would still be larger than the next 5.
It's
like, who are we fighting? Like, what are we? I think it's crazy. Anyway,
crazy.
That's a whole side thing.
You brought up a great point. Follow the money. And it says in the emails which I thought was strange, that a scientist or an engineer would talk about legislative issues. He claims in the email, and I'm sorry I don't have them in front of me, to the effect that this Lockheed lying to Congress, having these crafts, is what is one of the log jams. And Senator Schumer, kind of tiptoed around that this was one of the log jams with the NDAA legislation bill, was that they want to have eminent domain to go to any of these subcontractors and see what you got. So and I find that interesting that an engineer would get into a legislative moray with me on that on the email. So that's why I think was this kind of like a usefully placed. And I have been told by one person, I can't prove it, I'm just telling you folks, again, the play-by-play guy, that this email was sent out by somebody from the United States government to me to discredit Lockheed. Is that true? I don't know.
And it's possible that sometimes what they'll do is they'll put a little detail like the Asian descent detail. They'll drop something in there just to trace it, to see where the story goes. It's a way of sort of poisoning the well, but you get to track where people are spreading the story and who's telling it to who. It could be that. It could be another corporation trying to discredit Lockheed. It could be complete bullshit. It could be 100% true. It could be 80% true. Like what? That's the problem. And I want to talk about the UFO community right now, because I think that you have some strong ideas about where we're at and what's going on in the community. But it's definitely, from what I can see, and I want to get your thoughts on this, it seems like they're really trying to make sure they poison the well in a way that gets everybody arguing about what's real, what's not real, what's fake, who's full of shit, who's real, so that we make no progress. What is your assessment? That's just what I see, but what do you see, and where are you at with this?
I'm be really, really careful right now, because 90% of the people on the internet have inspired me and have been so kind to me in their emails and chat rooms or personally sent to me. So I want to be very careful. I don't think the government is doing anything we are fighting amongst ourselves. Casual UFO observers, podcasters, calling another podcaster a child molester, a pedophile. I mean, the government has to be laughing their ass off. What do they need to do? Send Jon Stewart a story, and knowing that he's going to go on some podcast and tell it because it's getting detailed, and then we're going to ghost him. Of course, sure. That could be happening too. I just, I would like to tell the UFO community, the casual observers, the ardent evangelical level skeptics, podcasters, and the UFO researchers. We are killing. We are eating one another. We are devouring one another, like that happened in other subcultures. Why are we doing this? Even though we don't agree to each other, let's move forward. If you don't agree or believe the Jon Stewart Lockheed story, why don't you help him or your friends prove that it is false, prove that it is real, prove who was behind the email. Do we have friends in Seattle to go to this guy's office? I'm not getting off on a tangent. If other than the videos and photos, the UFO community has one currency we trade in. It's stories. That's all we have. to tell me that a story from a police officer, that a story from an intelligence person that I've interviewed for 4 years, to tell me a story from somebody, a colonel in the Air Force, David Grush, coming forward, that David Grush is a liar. I mean, really? I mean, because he doesn't have the proof. That was his fault. And David and I know what would you call that? David and I know a similar person. And I've told him, I'm like, you got to tell David his only fault was he didn't have the documents. What do you want him to do? Ruin his career and his pension and steal documents? So the government community is at a standstill because they can't get documents. And when we get somebody with balls to bring forth documentation that the extraterrestrial phenomenon is true, Victor, what do? We crucify the son of a bitch. We put him through the blender. We tell him everything's fake. Come on. We crucify David Grush, a kind, intelligent, was he a major or colonel? We don't even refer to him by his military rank. We just tell him, you don't have any proof. It's secondhand stories. And we put that poor son of a gun through the UFO blender and spit it out on Reddit. And we're back to square one. Where does that get us? You eviscerate some people, a grandfather who's telling you he's just a play-by-play guy. Help me. I'm feeling in the dark. You eviscerate that guy who has never once said the alien interview is 100% real. Yet when you have him on your podcast, the title of the podcast is Jon Stewart says alien interview 100% real. I've never said that since 2019. I mean, we need, and believe me, haters are going to hate. I get that. I can't even go on Reddit anymore. But I'm not even talking with me. I mean, the comments for other people have just been crazy. And the UFO researchers need to, which I have tried to take the reins and be a person to do, look in the camera and say when you were wrong, and say that I shouldn't have charged $9.99 for that video or that documentary, or I was wrong here and I apologize, I was wrong here. But to hold a man or a woman who's been researching this for 30 years and expect them to regurgitate information from 25 years ago with the right coding and dates, and when they don't get it right, they're liars and bullshit and destroy them on Reddit or YouTube. I don't know where that's going. And all I know is that we are helping the government, and us as a community should be helping one another. You don't have to agree with me. I don't agree with Greer, Linda Howell, Dr. Sala, Rick Doty, intelligence people that have come forward. We don't all agree on everything. But my God, we need, without sounding Pollyanna and Frank Capra, we need to help each other a little bit more and bring down the rhetoric, because all we are doing is helping the government. And that's the last thing we want to do. We want to bring this to the forefront, not destroy people that do come forward. I've said my piece.
You make a really great point. The community has a lot of toxicity in it, for sure. There's no question that some people are just there to cause trouble. There's no question about that. And I think it's over. Too many people assume that there's like a fortune to be made in this world. I don't know anybody who got rich off of doing this. But I do think it's a pretty toxic moment, and I think that's just because so many more people are coming into it. You don't think there's any meddling, though? You don't think that's happening?
Wait, I didn't say
the government meddling, just getting in there and stirring shit up.
Laughing their ass off that we're doing a great job devouring each other. Do I think there's meddling? Oh, absolutely. Fake Reddit accounts and fake YouTube accounts that were just created. Absolutely, the government is meddling. I know for a fact that low-level people in the intelligence community, the flunkies or the people that just started, I can look in the camera and tell you, I know for a fact that they scour podcasts like this to hear what is going on simply for counterintelligence. So yes, there is a tremendous amount of meddling. All I am saying is that we are united. We are not united as a group. And so they must be laughing their ass off of the damage that we are doing to each other. You have to understand, 99% of the people don't have the document. but they saw it in their line of work. We have videos, and now the Jeremy Corbell jellyfish video, we've got somebody coming forward saying, no, I was at the base and that thing went into the water and came out of the water. Dude, I'm not sitting defending Jeremy Corbell because I don't agree with his Bob Lazar documentary, some issues. But does he get an apology from the ufology community on simply the people that have excoriated him on the jellyfish? Have anybody apologized to me when a Marine and a tech guru come forward and say, I heard the Lockheed story. JSOC does operate in America. Does anybody come forward and say, hey, Jon Stewart didn't make this up. This is, he was at least emailed this. I'm not crying mea culpa. I'm just saying, where are the apologies? Where is the rhetoric going down? It's revening up. It's podcasters destroying one another in fights. And we need to bring the conversation to a higher bar. I am not saying, and I will finish with this, I am not saying that podcasters don't have a responsibility to ask good questions, to call out things that don't make sense. But there's a way to do that. There's a respectful way to do that, and giving the person being interviewed a chance to answer. And that has been happening for 20 years. But we all have to just tone down the rhetoric. I don't think it's going to happen, and it really demoralizes me because the things that I have read are just awful. Awful.
I think it's intentional, and I think you see it on Reddit a lot. I see it all the time. You see an account that's 34 days old that has no karma, that they're shit posting. They're constant. You'll put a post up, and within 30 seconds, 100 people have commented, and it's all negative. And you're like, wait a second. You click on their screen name. It's all anonymous accounts that are like 2 weeks old, a month old, maybe a year. And it is designed to demoralize you. I think it's pretty obvious, like 5th grade level kind of stuff that they do. They just want to get in your head and mess with you and make you not, you'll never know what's real. You'll never know for sure what's correct. And along the way, they're going to try and like just get you to feel like giving it up and packing it in.
Right.
That's the point.
Exactly. Again, I'm not bringing myself into this conversation, but, when you spend $20,000, you don't ask for any money. You tell people you don't know, you're not sure, please help me. And the only thing people can tell you about your 5-year investigation and all the money you've spent and the pleas for help is you're fat, you have crazy eyes, totally fake. That's the default. I'm fat. Oh, I was a car salesman in college for my family business. That we stopped business because my dad is in hospice with a Better Business Bureau rating A+. He ran for governor. What does that mean? Well, that means I'm collaborative. That means that people in a state trust me. That means that I've had to do research. That means that I've been vetted, my background, and people haven't found anything that was alarming. That's what. When a podcaster says John ran for governor, that's what it means.
We're already at a point in the conversation where we're saying they've got UFOs locked in a building. They've already reverse engineered. Like, we're that far.
Right.
20 years ago, you couldn't even say that.
Ourselves. Right. Thank you. You are a great interviewer. Seriously. Thank you.
Well,
it's already been established. We have bodies in craft. So why are we devouring ourselves?
It's even crazier because you mentioned the Schumer Amendment a few minutes ago, and I think that this is something people miss. And they go, the Schumer Amendment, I'm starting to think, as I think more about it after reflecting on how it all went down, I'm starting to come around to the idea that it was put out there as a deliberate decoy. Because if you look at that bill page by page, it is a baseball bat with nails sticking out of it for the military industrial complex. Everything you would want in a dream bill. There was a timetable. They had to disclose by a certain date. They had eminent domain. They had subpoena power. They could go get the CEO of Lockheed and put him in under oath and get him to testify. And if he lies, he goes to jail. This was all in the bill. And when you float that bill out there, you're going to, if there's a there, they're going to shoot this thing down. And they did. They came out of the shadows to torch this bill.
Yep.
And maybe that was the whole point, was to see, now Congress has seen that Lockheed and these other defense contractors are willing to come out of the shadows and say, no, you cannot do this. And that verifies that there is a there. There is something going on. So now we've got David Grush verifying it. We have their own actions verifying it. It's kind of like the new normal now. We've pushed that bar so far out. 20 years ago, if you had talked about UFOs too much, you could lose your job. People would think you were crazy. If you were an airline pilot, they would send you to have a psychological evaluation. Right. You could lose your license.
That's a fact.
You could get medically pulled from flight duty. A lot of things could happen to you. These days, that's over. We're at a new place now. Joe Rogan, most popular podcast in the world, talks about this all the time. New York Times, the newspaper of record, all the time. Major news outlets, all the time. You're seeing this like 24/7 coverage of something. Yeah. I mean, it's wild where we're at. And I think you're right. Like the community is not doing itself any favors by being so divided. But I also don't think that's happening by accident. I think there's a lot more intentional.
No, it's not. And again, remember that we are doing the most of our damage. And remember, with people that come forward, they're not always going to have the absolute verbatim proof, which is why, walking my talk, I tell people, listen to the stories that I tell you about what had happened during my investigation. You don't believe in the video? Explain to me what happened with my DIA FOIA. You don't believe in the video? Why did the National Air and Space Intelligence Center go batshit crazy and tell an agent to stop talking to me? You don't believe in the video? Why hasn't anyone come forward in 30 years, and I'm glad I'm bringing this up, 30 years to say I created the dummy? I was one of the medics. Why? So forget, and I can't eloquently as good of analogy as you put it, but it's a point. Go to the second step and ask yourself, this is my advice to people. Go to the second step and say, why is this happening? Why wouldn't the Schumer Amendment of eminent domain, being able to ask a CEO, why wouldn't that be left in an amendment? Everybody in your neighborhood would have done that, would believe that in. Why is it not in? Why is common sense being thrown out the window? Forget everything else. Forget the beans, the sand, the facilities. Why is common sense being thrown out the window in Congress? And there you're going to find your answer.
Jon, what are you looking forward to? What do you see on the horizon this year? It looks like 2024 is shaping up to be kind of a make or break year. Are you expecting anything? Is there something you're waiting to see? What are you looking forward to?
Personally, getting the hell out of the UFO community. And I'm sure people, once this is done, I'm gone. I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to go on. I'm not going to cry mea culpa. So personally, to get the documentaries out, show people what I have found. Hopefully the world will respond, and it will cause some sort of an initial lighting another powder keg. I hope that another interview could come forward, like the Danny Sheehan interview. If something of that can come forward where people are like, wait a minute, now there's 2 interviews, and come on. For me personally, that would be great. And somebody coming forward from the military clandestinely, which is called catastrophic disclosure, for that to happen somehow, some way. For Congress to show some video of a craft coming down, some being getting out of it. I know I'm dreaming here, but if that could possibly happen with Congress, I don't think it will. What I call this, kind of a soft disclosure. We're not pointing fingers. We're not divulging secrets where we give it to our enemies. Something that was done in South Africa when Nelson Mandela took over. You form a committee, you form a group, and you just have to use dispensation for all of the illegal activities, because it's the only way. Let me tell you something, folks. You listen and believe anything I'm saying here. Dispensation, letting people off the hook, is the only way these CEOs and these colonels and generals and majors are going to come forward. Letting them off the hook, not, with a whistleblower amendment that goes to citizens also, like the contractors in this program, the CEOs. When you let them off the hook, and their yachts and their mansions and their stock accounts are not in jeopardy, then you will see other levels of individuals coming forward that, you know, would be like, this, how could this be alive? This, you know, this is the CEO of, you know, of Raytheon. So I hope that happens. I hope the community settles down a little bit and moves the initiative forward, moves the ball forward, and that all of us get to the next level of our comportment, the way we treat each other, the way of dealing with each other, asking questions and answering questions, coming truthful when you were wrong, or, you know, when you misstepped or whatnot, taking the grift, so to speak, out of this whole phenomenon. And I know, I believe in my heart that this is going to bring the country together. We will eventually have some sort of disclosure, something that will be foolproof, that we can say, aha, this is going on. This is probably the source code of all religions. And okay, let's move on now with our world, our small little planet floating in the solar system.
Jon, that was well put. I have to leave it there. How can people reach out to you if they want to contact you with information? I know you said you want to leave it behind, but you also need some help to finish these projects. You want to send me fake stories to
get me in trouble.
What can people do?
My email is JonAlanStewart at AOL.com. It's spelled Jon without the H, Allen, ALAN, 1L, Stewart, like the comedian Jon Stewart, STEWART at AOL.com. You ever want to email? I am great about emailing people back. I consider it an honor when somebody reaches out to me. And again, if you have anything that's pertinent to my investigation, please forward it, and hopefully my emails won't disappear, and I could take it into advisory, and it will help out the investigation. And Clint, thank you to you. Thank you to all of your listeners and viewers. I've been waiting to be on your show since you had Danny Sheehan on, and he talked about another alien interview, and it's been a privilege and honor. From our emails, you seem like a great father and family person, and I really respect that about you, and it's been great communicating with you, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Jon. Well, good luck with your work. I'm sure we'll talk again, and I'll leave it there. But thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.